When we think about how we evaluate, what we actually talk about, and it's a system of evaluation. So every application is sort of considered with these things in mind. We're thinking about your academic self. Do you have the content that you need for what it is you want to take on when you arrive at Penn? And do you have the skills you need to draw on that content to be successful at the starting point? That's one of the ways that we think about processes that are changing the norm. And it's really important to us that that door remain open. My name is Whitney Soule, and I am the Vice Provost and Dean of Admissions at Penn. I also work with leaders around campus thinking about how the work we're doing in admissions fits in with the overall university goals. And then I have a role working externally at a national and global level, talking about U.S. higher education, financial aid, how to fund a U.S. education. So I get to travel a lot and do a lot of presenting.
What would you say was kind of your main motivation, or was there kind of a particular thing that you wanted to do with your career that kind of led you to become the dean, or even before that?
I love the question. It might surprise you that I had no guiding force whatsoever. And when I graduated from high school, I knew I wanted to go to college. That had always been something I cared about. But I cared about it because I knew it was a good thing to do and it was important to continue my education. It wasn't because I had a specific thing that I wanted to achieve and I knew I needed a college degree in that topic to get there. So when I was applying to college, what I knew was that I wanted to be out on my own and be in that community. And when I graduated, I probably could have worked harder. But I worked hard and I worked enough to feel inspired by what I was learning. And I felt very much myself at the college that I attended. So I had an internship graduating from college working for the American Red Cross in a local chapter. And I really enjoyed it, but that job didn't continue. I was living with friends, a bunch of us renting a house that was only supposed to have 4 people in it. And I think there were 8 of us. And to make the rent work, I was cleaning houses and teaching aerobics in several different clubs and staying with people's dogs when they were traveling and anything that I could do to get the rent money while I was figuring out what I wanted to do. And I ended up landing a permanent job with the American Red Cross in a different chapter. I enjoyed it, but at the same time, admission opening came in my alma mater and I was still living in that area. And so I was hired into that job. 30 plus years later, I am now in the role that I'm in. But I will tell you that it wasn't that job that made me want to be a dean. It was that job in which I was using so many skills that I had used in different ways in college that I didn't know how to apply. And I liked every part of it. So I wanted to stay and do more. And as I did more, I was given more opportunity for leadership. And multiple times I thought about leaving to do something else, like where else can I use these skills? But as I stayed in the career that I was in, the more I advanced and the more I had different responsibilities, the more I matured into understanding that in addition to liking the absolute of the work I was doing, I could see we were creating opportunity in really important ways. And so I matured into the vision and I matured into sort of the purpose of wanting to be really good at making change within higher ed to make the invitation to higher ed more interesting, more accessible, more equitable in how students experience the college application process.
When it comes to specifically your work with admissions, what would you say is that factor that you think is most important in looking for in a person?
I love this question. I'm so glad that you asked it because it gets at the heart. It is the basis of everything that we do. It shapes the way that we message when we're recruiting. It's based on the values that we derive in admissions. And those values, they're very, very clear and they relate to how we present ourselves so that as a student looking at Penn, you can imagine what we value and what we care about, but also it's the basis of how we structure our evaluation and selecting students. And so constantly reviewing that and changing our processes to be responsive to the breadth of what students can bring into our applicant pool. So the values that we're working with are sort of collective care, like caring for the individual experience, but also thinking about caring for the whole at large. And then we also look at purpose. And purpose is not a specific passion. The idea of purpose, when we're evaluating it, is the student showing us that they can organize their time around things that matter to them, which means that what matters to you can change. But what you're demonstrating is a disposition toward using your energy to apply it to things that matter and have your attention and that you can move forward with it. That's purpose. That's the point. Because in a community of learners, in a community of anything, it's engaging with other people, and noticing the positive contributions of other people is really important. And then being able to acknowledge it is also really important, right? So that's one of the ways that we think about processes that are changing the norm for what students might otherwise encounter in an application process. And likewise, thinking about access to the application process and how we can evaluate students regardless of their resources. And it's really important to us that that door remain open.
What would you say was like, or is a huge thing to know, or like a mindset that you think you should have going into or navigating young adulthood?
Oh, this is another really great question. First of all, when you think about purpose and the anxiety that a lot of people your age feel in trying to find it, explain it, and expect to be judged on it, keep in mind that the jobs that you'll all have when you're my age probably don't even exist yet. Not only the opportunity, but the likelihood that your idea of what you can do and how you want to get there is going to continue to be inventing itself. And you're going to be working with that as you mature as a person and as a professional going forward. So there's just that as a fact. And then I would also say that the idea that you need to define yourself by what you think we value. And so what they'll choose to do or not do in order to think about the college process is actually like a real sacrifice of the biggest superpower that you all have, which is individuality. Yes. That is the biggest standout thing that could be in an application. And just by nature of being human on the planet, nobody else occupies the exact same space in the way that you do. So thinking about what you want to call forward that is uniquely you is one of the strongest things you can do as you're making choices through high school and in college and beyond, right? Which is being really true to your own self. And one of the things that I have talked about related to the work that I do is as I keep making decisions to stay in the work I'm doing changes because the environment around me changes, the schools where I've worked have changed, the level of responsibility I have has changed, but I have never had to work against myself to do the work. The work I want to do is so aligned with what gets me excited and energized. It manifests itself in the work I get to do professionally, but it's what manifests in my life outside of work as well, is a great guide.